Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my Line of God's Daily Diary series. As usual, before I discuss what I have achieved since yesterday's Daily Diary video, I want to go ahead and read you a chapter from the Bible. Today I will be continuing with Deuteronomy chapter 15. At the end of every 7 years thou shalt make a release, and this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lendeth aught unto his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Of a foreigner thou mayest exact it again, but of that which is thine with thy brother thine hand shall release. Save when there shall be no poor among you, for the Lord shall greatly bless thee in the land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it. Only if thou carefully hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all these commandments which I command thee this day. For the Lord thy God blessed thee as he hath promised thee, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, but thou shalt not borrow, and thou shalt reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over thee. If there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thine heart, nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother, but thou shalt open thine hand wide unto him, and shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need in that which he wanteth. Beware that there be not a thought in thine wicked heart, saying, The 7th year, the year of the release, is at hand, and thine eye be evil against thy poor brother, and thou givest him not, and he cry unto the Lord against thee, and it be a sin unto thee. Thou shalt surely give him, and thine heart shall not be grieved when thou givest unto him, because that for this thing the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy works, and in all that thou puttest thine hand unto. For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, and to thy needy in thy land. And if thy brother, an Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee. And when thou sendest him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go away empty. Thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee thou shalt give unto him. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee. Therefore I command thee this thing today. And it shall be, if he say unto thee, I will not go away from thee, because he loveth thee in thine house, because he is well with thee, that thou shalt take an awl, and thrust it through his ear unto the door, and it shall be and he shall be thy servant forever. And also unto thy maidservant thou shalt do likewise. It shall not seem hard unto thee, when thou sendest him away free from thee, for he hath been worth a double hired servant to thee, in serving thee 6 years, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all that thou doest. All the firstling males that come of thy herd, and of thy flock thou shalt sanctify unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt do no work with the firstling of thy bullock, nor shear the firstling of thy sheep. Thou shalt eat it before the Lord thy God year by year in the place which the Lord shall choose, thou and thy household. And if there be any blemish therein, as if it be lame or blind, or of any ill blemish, thou shalt not sacrifice it unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt eat it within thy gates. The unclean and the clean person shall eat it alike, as the roebuck and as the hart. Only thou shalt not eat the blood thereof. Thou shalt pour it upon the ground as water. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You know, the first thing that stood out to me was actually more impactful, so we'll get back onto that. Not more impactful. It's not more impactful. I should choose my words correctly. It definitely stood out to me in terms of how the Lord sees his people, which we'll get around to that later. But probably more impactful is this one here, which we're going to discuss first. Here, Deuteronomy 15:12. Just to make sure I choose my words correctly. And if thy brother, an Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee. Think about what is being said in this chapter. It doesn't it's actually crazy, right? But it's the history of not just the Bible, but the world, which is slavery. And in this case, slavery where it's of a Hebrew enslaving another Hebrew. This is not what seems like most of the slavery in the history of the world, which is one group of people, the entire group subjugates and dominates another group of people that they enslave, and it's completely like across some kind of line. Where in this case, where there's like a clear distinction in between this ruling class and the slave class. In this case, the ruling class and the slave class are the exact same group of people. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, but that's exactly what's being mentioned here. Now, of course, there would be other examples of slavery as well. I do believe that, right? It's not like potentially the Hebrews only enslaved other Hebrews. I don't believe that. It's the idea that the Hebrews would enslave another Hebrew, and there's actually like discussion of this in the Bible that this was happening. That's like actually crazy in terms of like when you think about the examples of slavery from, in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, 1500s, whatever. Those examples are typically one ruling class, one group of people enslaving an entirely other group of people. And like this is a struggle that is excuse me, this is a struggle that is typically where the ruling class is clearly one group subjugating other group or groups that are not their group. But in this case, the Bible mentions that the Hebrews have enslaved other Hebrews. And that's like to me like crazy. But at the same time, it's like, I suppose in some capacity, if we think about not slavery, but just like serving, just serving, there has always been, even within own groups, the idea of a ruling class, the idea of like people who do like serving kind of work, like maids, things like that. Like those people, they whatever would have cleaned the place, would have cooked the food, they would have done these things. Are they slaves? No, no, they're not slaves. I'm not even necessarily trying to use the word servant. They're like a different socioeconomic class than the ruling class, right? Yeah, that's absolutely like the truth. And that happens within own groups as well. It's just that to see it at the degree of slavery is actually like quite stark in terms of the fact that that's typically not seen in I mean, now there's no slavery, thank God. So pretty much, I mean, at least in the most of the Western world and developed world, there's no slavery whatsoever. So it's definitely good that things have made progress. So, of course, the verse that stood out to me, which was not as impactful as this, but certainly relevant in terms of how God views his people, is Deuteronomy 15:6, which reads, "For the Lord thy God blessed thee, as he hath promised thee, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, but thou shalt not borrow, and thou shalt reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over thee." So this is a very impactful verse because this is how God sees his people. He sees them that they should be the ones who took care of their own household and can lend unto others. They should not be the ones who failed in their own household and have to borrow from others for survival. And this is a very impactful point because that's exactly how the Lord sees his people. He sees them as the lenders and not the borrowers. And this is a very important point because, as we know in the Bible, when we think of debt, one of the most common scriptures is that the borrower is a slave to the lender. And this has been something that has definitely like you think about things where like, oh, like if you have like let's say you have like $500,000 and you have the ability to buy a nice rental property or something. Would you rather buy that property with cash only, or would you rather split it and buy five properties because you might get appreciation, you might get more cash flow, etc. But you have debt. Now the idea is there are some people that say there's good debt and things like that. I'm not getting involved in the semantics of this because one thing is clear: it doesn't appear that debt is a sin. That's for sure. What it does appear is that God clearly states in the Bible that debt is not a good thing, and that he sees his people as the lenders of the debt and not the borrowers of the debt. That he says the borrower is the slave to the lender. Now, I'm not getting involved in this idea of if someone has like a huge surplus, right? But what if someone has no money? Now the idea is, should they fight and struggle to build themselves up, or should they just take debt and forget and just like willingly and maliciously refused, knowing from the beginning they should never pay the debt back. What does the Bible say? The Bible says the wicked borrow, intending never to repay. So God sees these things and he says them. Why? Because it's wrong. It's wrong. In good faith, they agreed on this, right? But then they say things like, "Oh, the other person gave this. It's their mistake for giving the debt. They're going to take it and not pay it back." Well, that's not how it's supposed to work, right? Right. And if you think about how God sees his people, it makes that much more sense. Because he sees his people and says, "You take care of your own household." What does the Bible teach? It says, "Any man who cannot take care of his own household is worse than an infidel." That's the idea. That first you take care of your own household, and after that, then you can lend out to other people. Instead of being a borrower who is slave to the lender, who says they will wickedly take the debt money and knowing full well they never intended to have a plan to pay it back. Think of how different these groups are. And then ask yourself, is it clearly not right and wrong? And how beautifully God teaches these lessons. He says it with kindness. He says it with kindness. But as we know, why does he have to rebuke people for their sins? Because sometimes they cannot learn the easy way. So, it is what it is. So with that, I'll go ahead and end the Bible reading there for today and transition over to what I have achieved since yesterday's Daily Dive video. Since yesterday's Daily Dive video, I worked my software engineering job and I trained jiu-jitsu. And with no further achievements since yesterday's Daily Dive video, I want to go ahead and say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.